Dear children, I invite you for individual conversion. This time is for you. Without you, God's plan cannot be realized.
One of the Franciscan priests associated with Medjugorje was asked, should we be afraid of the coronavirus? His response was, the only virus we should fear is the virus of sin. And then he emphasized the importance of such practices like prayer, fasting, making sacrifices. And in this sense, we see a deeper message that the spirituality of Medjugorje is giving us, a message of inner freedom. How do we transcend the external circumstances which are affecting the world and which are causing so much damage and pain? Can we still find a freedom through our relationship with Jesus Christ? And the answer is yes. The saints, they looked at it from this perspective. They acknowledged that there are two deaths that a human being can experience. The first death, something that each of us will experience, the separation of soul from body. Every person in the history of the human race has and will experience this death. But the second one is much more horrific. The second death is the eternal estrangement between the soul and God. It is hell. It is eternal damnation. It is perdition. It is the worst tragedy that a human being could ever experience. The saints recognized, compared to that second death, the first death is nothing. The first death is not to be feared. If you are somebody who is close with Jesus Christ, if you are somebody who is close with Our Lady, if you have an intimate, passionate, real relationship with them, then there is nothing to fear. Then death can be an invitation into a deeper union with the divine, into something sacred and beautiful and special. St. Ignatius of Loyola, he used the term holy indifference. He meant to be so immersed in God that you come to this state where you no longer have a preference for health over sickness, for riches over poverty, for a long life over a short life. What you really care about is the will of God. And I remember being on social media, and I was comparing these two perspectives. I saw a woman write something on social media where she wrote, I hope and pray that this pandemic ends as quickly as possible. And of course, that's a rational perspective. When human beings are dying, when people are losing loved ones, when there's grief, when there's suffering, that's a rational perspective. And then I saw another woman, also a devout Catholic, saying on a podcast that if the Lord is asking her to suffer with the coronavirus, she is willing to do so. She is willing to surrender that way. And that's a perspective that many in our world, many in our culture may consider irrational, to say yes to suffering, to say yes to the cross. However, that perspective, there's something about it that's deeper. Because in the first perspective, I pray that this ends as quickly as possible. I sense a component of fear. But in that second perspective, I sense a component of a fearlessness, realizing that if I am close with God, realizing that if I have a radical, intimate relationship with Jesus Christ, realizing that if He is even inviting me to a deeper cross here, then this doesn't touch me, in the sense that we are not to fear what kills the body, but only that which can kill the soul. And that is sin. That's what we need to stay away from. We need to realize that a life of radical discipleship with Christ frees us from that illness, which is the real illness. I love the example of the great Russian writers, whether it's Tolstoy or Dostoevsky or Solzhenitsyn. They share something in common. All three men were at one point in their lives in prisons. And it was in prison that they discovered God. It was in prison that they had conversion. Why? Because when they were imprisoned, like Solzhenitsyn explains, they had to realize, if my body is taken captive, what do I still have? And he realized, Alexander Solzhenitsyn, I have my soul, I have my interior life, and therefore I need to concentrate on that reality, that they cannot take from me, that they cannot touch. And that's also a reality that we need to see on a universal level. Whether the enemy is a political, military enemy, or a bodily virus, spiritually, they cannot touch you. Spiritually, when you are united to God, you are the freest person. You possess something that is special. You possess an entrance into eternity. You possess an entrance into heaven. When your great loves are Jesus and Mary, those cannot be taken away by any virus. Those are gifts that come to you and that you receive even more immediately in death when you stay faithful and loyal and live a beautiful, radical Christian life. It's such a glorious reality. I love the example of Sister Claire Crockett, beautiful young sister who died in an earthquake. There's a wonderful movie on her life called All or Nothing. And somehow she knew that she was going to die early. Somehow she knew. She said maybe even at age 33, like Jesus. And that's exactly what happens. In that mystical age where so many saints and mystics and Christ himself died, she died at 33. And there was a conversation that she had with some of the sisters before she died. It was a conversation on death. And Sister Claire said, why should I be afraid when death can be an encounter with Jesus Christ, the one who I love most, the one who I have given my life to, the one who loves me more than anyone can love me? How can I be afraid of that? And in that statement, dear brothers and sisters, we see the freedom of Christian discipleship. We see the freedom of a person madly, passionately in love with Jesus Christ. A person who realizes that when they have Jesus, they have everything. Death is transcendence because he is the resurrected Messiah who himself transcended death, and he is inviting us to a deeper faith where even the fear of death is overcome because we realize who awaits us. It is the Lord himself.